The Denver Broncos offense headlines the biggest concern with this team. With 3 games left in the season, Broncos Country shared their thoughts, and we share ours on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
There are concerns aplenty with this Denver Broncos football team with just 3 games remaining on the season. Playoff chances still alive, but hanging on by a thread. Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day. You can get Locked on Broncos free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, or you can watch us every single day on YouTube as well. We always appreciate the interaction, the engagement from the avid members of Broncos Country, and you all got involved in today's episode of the show, and you still can as you watch or as you listen wherever you get your podcast. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined alongside by Sayre Bedinger, Sayre expert, predominantlyorange.com. Today's Locked on Broncos is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We kind of open things up here for today's episode of the show to everybody in Broncos Country to share with us, with 3 games remaining, what are your biggest concerns with this football team, and what are things that you're confident in with this football team in 3 games remaining? We'll dive deep into all of those things here on today's episode of the show. I feel like if you have a problem, you got to bring it to the forefront, right? And there are a ton of problems and perceived problems in the eyes of Broncos Country about this football team with 3 games left. And to be honest with you, Sayre, most of the replies that we got about the concerns with Denver has to do with their offense.
They do, Cody. Obviously, I think it centers around the quarterback as well, right? Which I know our good friend Nick Kendall, he brought that up among his concerns being your quarterback, Russell Wilson, right? And I think that's a highly contested topic. So it's a spicy one to start off with, right? Because we always see both sides of the coin here. Whenever Russell Wilson's name comes up, we get accused of harping on him too much on this show. We've gotten accused of being too positive about Russell Wilson amidst the struggles. You know, whatever side of the coin you fall on here, I think it's okay to be critical of Russell Wilson, despite the fact that he's had some good statistics. I was watching a show the other day, Cody. I can't remember which one it was, but they said the Broncos offense is kind of like a basketball team that is only good at making layups and shooting 3-pointers. And it's kind of an appropriate thing, right? It's kind of exactly what this team has been. Long distance shots, we got them. You want the layups, we got them. But you want anything in between there, we don't have no DeMar DeRozan on this team, Cody. The mid-range game is not existent there for the Denver Broncos. And I think Russell Wilson and the inability to have that consistently, it's a valid concern, I think, from Nick and others who commented on our post.
Yeah, I think Nick brings up a great point. You know, he also mentions the defensive front end and all the talent that they have there really on that defensive line. And I feel like as well, kind of going to the quarterback point, and I think this is a valid conversation. This is something we're going to have at least through the first 5 days of the new league year when it happens. I believe it's March 15th, if I'm not mistaken here. But Russell Wilson's contract, I think after the 5th day of the new league year, it becomes $37 million of that becomes guaranteed, which makes obviously the salary cap. I saw our good friend Zahn post that there was a thing with Diana Rossini who said that she doesn't believe that Russell Wilson will be part of what Sean Payton has planned after the season. That's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can go down at some point here. But, I mean, you spot on there. I like the analogy that you made about the mid-range game. And the mid-range game in this situation for the Broncos is an intermediate passing game. They do not have that. And that, to me, I think brings a valid concern that there is no sustainability here with how the offense is playing, especially if they can't run the football. Defensive front talent, I feel like it's more of a consistency thing, right? Because there's games where the Broncos run defense pretty good, right? Then there's games like we just saw this past week against the Detroit Lions where it was terrible. Gap integrity was missed there. They struggled with speed on the perimeter. They struggled with, I think the edge contain guy, like your outside linebackers would step wide to keep contained, and they would go inside there. So that's where linebackers and that's where that defensive tackle have to fill in D end. They have to make sure that they're sound there, and unfortunately they weren't in this game. So I think consistency on that defensive side is a factor. Tim Wenz kind of sharing the same sentiments. Offensive inefficiency here when we talk about concerns. Junior G says uncoordinated offense. Michael LaFour says the offense doesn't really do anything well. And I think these are all valid points. Now, I think when Denver can run the ball well, Sayre, we've seen them have more success, right, overall as a team. But when the run game is non-existent, as it has been as of late, and you're trying to just take these shots downfield, it's not sustainable. If you find yourselves down 10-0 or even 14-0 in a game, the way that the Broncos offense is operating is not going to work. And I think that brings up some bigger questions here going forward about the direction of this team, the offense in and of itself. But I would say the most valid concern expressed through most of the replies we got has everything to do with the Broncos offense itself.
Yeah, and thankfully it's not as bad as last year, right? Where they were the worst team in the NFL in terms of scoring the football. I mean, at least they've been able to show at times this season that there's a level of competence there. And we're being hard on them because obviously you expect a lot out of a future Hall of Fame head coach and a quarterback that's won a Super Bowl, who's been consistently one of the best quarterbacks in the league and who got a $245 million contract. You expect a lot out of these guys, and I think rightfully so. And I love that Michael was pretty blunt about it, right? Just saying that the offense doesn't really do anything well. And I think there's some validity to that. I mean, some people might see that take or hear that take and say, well, that's just a hot take. Of course, the offense does some things well. And I think the point to be made here is that they have done things well, right? They have thrown the ball deep downfield well. They have played really good games on the offensive line. Like I think about the Cleveland game, for example. You have had really good games where you're running the football. You have had games where you take care of it and you have balance, but there's just not a consistent factor in any way, shape, or form. And that's, again, to the points that were made by Tim and Junior, like the offensive inefficiency, the consistency, it's not there. And I think that's a valid reason to be concerned with 3 games remaining. You got 3 games against, backup quarterbacks and teams that are pretty much out of it, right? You feel like your offense should be able to go and play well and help you get into the playoffs. But I don't think anybody in Broncos country really has there's certainly not any blind faith that the offense is going to just magically have a great 3-run stretch here. Nobody is really, I think, solidified in this fact that, oh yeah, I've got faith the offense is going to step up against these teams. They haven't really proven over the course of the season, like Michael said, that they're really good at anything on a consistent basis.
And that's something you and I talked about as well, right? When they were on their win streak, we're like, all right, hey, Denver, like, they're winning games, but they're leaving some opportunities out there on the field, and they've shown flashes, right? So it gave us the idea here, and we've talked about this as well with the fan base, is that, okay, the Broncos offense hasn't played their best football yet. Now the bigger question here, Sayre, going forward is, can the Broncos even get there? I mean, there's 3 games left on the season. If you're going to be a playoff team, you have to be better on the offensive side of the ball. But with them having as many games and having as many opportunities as they've had, really without being impacted negatively on offense by injuries, I don't know if this team is going to reach that this year, right? Which I think there's a lot of optimism about them doing it next year. Next year could look entirely different when we talk about the offense, quarterback, but that's a conversation for another day. I just don't personally believe right now, unless something drastic happens this week, that we will see the Broncos offense reach the maximum potential it needs to if they're going to make a postseason run this year. To me, they haven't shown us that through 16 weeks of play. That's a little bit of a concern here going forward. And Broncos Country, as you're watching along, you're listening along as well. You want to share your thoughts on what your concerns are with this football team. It could be on the offense. It could be on coaching. It could be defense. Make sure you drop it in the YouTube comments, or you tweet us on social media or interact with us on Threads if you're there, at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Locked On Broncos. But we talked about the concerns. What are things that Broncos Country has expressed confidence in with this football team with just 3 games remaining, including the defense being able to sustain a little bit more? We'll dive deep into that here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos podcast is brought to you by our friends over there at PrizePicks. And as you all know, PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. That's a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce had a 10.5-point combo of 3-pointers made plus receptions. If you want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Scholes, and others. You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each and every week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go check it out today. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100.
We talked about some concerns for this Denver Broncos team with 3 games remaining, but what about areas that the fan base may be feeling confident in? I think, Cody, we're going to get a lot of honest takes here, especially coming off of a brutal loss against the Detroit Lions. You're going to get some real, hey, these are consistent things that have me feeling good about the Denver Broncos here over the course of this final couple weeks of the season. We're going to talk all about that, including maybe some confidence in the coaching staff here after a big blowout loss. But before we do that, I want to say thank you and give a shout out to every single one of you that makes Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you know it's your team every day, free and available anywhere that you listen to podcasts, as well as, like Cody said before, you can watch the show on YouTube, and we appreciate every single one of you members of Broncos Country that rock with us every single day. It's been a blast this season, and hopefully there's more good to come. And look, we got to look at the positive side of things, right? Of course, there's plenty to be worried about with this Denver Broncos team, Cody, but on the other side, you got to answer both sides of the question. What are you concerned about, but what are you also confident in? I think we got some good answers on this one from some members of Broncos Country, and I'm interested to hear what you think too, Cody. But this first one from Nick Kendall, he said it. He's confident in the coaching staff. That's a rare place, I think, for the Broncos to be in, especially at this stage of the season.
When was the last time, since you and I have been doing this show together, where we have sat here and we've talked with Broncos Country and we've expressed, like, you know what? I'm not worried about the coaching staff. I think there's been certain coaches, maybe certain coordinators over the course of the time we've been doing the show together, where it's like, you know, hey, this guy's not the problem, right? But overall, I feel like collectively, from top to bottom, the coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, heck, special teams, and it's all led by head coach Sean Payton. I feel like he's got these guys in a position where even if they don't make the postseason this year, I think the run that they've had, what they've demonstrated throughout the course of facing adversity and always responding, to me says this is a well-coached football team. Sure, they have their moments. They have their times where maybe they get out-coached a little bit in some instances, but that's football. That happens to everybody. That happens to some of the best coaches in the game, including Andy Reid, including Bill Belichick. So it's not necessarily an outlier like, oh, you know, Sean Payton was out-coached by Dan Campbell. That's a sign of concern. It's football. That's part of the game. Overall, this coaching staff, and I think the players' belief in this coaching staff has them in a good position right now. So I agree with Nick. I think the coaching staff is a great thing to be confident in if you're a member of Broncos Country right now. And look, even no matter how this season ends, you and I talked about it earlier on an episode of the show. Regardless, even if Denver doesn't make the postseason, we view this as a successful season or a step in the right direction. And a big part of that, Sean Payton coming in, ruffling some feathers, not being not like Sean Payton's not doing it the nice way. He's not being the, hey buddy, I love you. It's he's ripping guys on the sideline, which that's, you know, we can have some conversations about that as well here on another episode of the show. But I agree. The coaching staff has done a tremendous job here, considering the massive turnaround that they've had and how many coaches they moved on from last year outside of Marcus Dixon, Christian Parker, the only 2 guys back on staff from last year's debacle that was. To me, that's a huge, I think, positive sign here for Broncos Country going forward.
I think it is too, Cody, and I'm really excited about that fact because it gives you something to build on, even if you're not 100% focused on this year right now as a fan. If you feel like, man, that we got to wait now till next year, I think there's an infrastructure in place, even with a change of players and personnel, things like that. You've got a good coaching staff and one that you can believe in for sure. And I got some bonus ones here from Richardson and Zach Seegers as we are recording. So just want to throw a couple more in here, some more positives. Richardson is confident that when we get turnovers, we're going to win. I mean, I think that's pretty clear at this point. The Broncos create turnovers. that plays into their favor to win ball games and get that offense extra possessions. Zach Seeger's our good friend over there at Let's Talk Broncos. He says that he's confident that, hey, Cortland Sutton, he's making insane plays. I'm confident that he's going to continue to do so, right? So I feel like Cortland Sutton has maybe had the best individual season of any Broncos player for sure offensively. Maybe Quinn Miners has a gripe there, but Cortland Sutton is up there, and he's had an amazing resurgence, kind of a second breakout campaign. What about this one here from DM Audio ENG, though, Cody? He says, confident the team is going to fight hard the rest of the season. You're in that locker room. You're hearing the players. You're around them. You're seeing this up close. Do you think that's a valid reason to be confident in this team?
100% spot on. I mean, look, even during the 1-5, like, and that's what I said. Like, some people are thinking I'm crazy. Like, I thought at 1-5, like, okay, hey, their postseason ambitions are done, but I think that this team is still going to try to fight and claw their way back when they were at that point. And I said it countless times over at milehighsports.com in my written columns and on air for Mile High Sports. But just being in that locker room, even when they were 1-5, like, these guys never had this, oh man, like, we just keep getting our butts kicked. The season's done. Like, these guys always had to, like, we know what type of football team we can be. And that's kind of playing into, where my mindset is once we obviously talk about our concerns, yours and I's, and also the things that we're confident in. But it's just that these guys, they believe in each other, and they've had this belief inside that locker room, which I think is the most important thing that you can have. If we remember Sean Payton's conference call a little bit earlier this week, he talked about how impressed and how pleased he's been with the team leadership inside the locker room. That right there has held these guys together all season long, because while at times we get on our pedestals here in media and we get in front of our microphones, and fans obviously have access to everything. We write columns, and obviously fans have Twitter. It's more so like, while everybody was already writing death sentences for, the season and things like that, the obituaries, overall, these guys said, you know what? We know what type of football team we can be. We know exactly our identity. If we play the right way, we're going to do that. And so these guys have stuck together. And it's not just, hey, we're just going to show up and practice together. These guys are out doing events with each other. Justin Simmons is putting on events where he's got teammates coming out there. They're going to support spouses of other teammates that are celebrating accolades like we just saw over the past weekend. So this is a very family-friendly football team inside that locker room. To me, I think that's a great point there, and I see it every day. And I've been part of teams like that, and I've coached teams like that, and there's nothing better. There's nothing more galvanizing than that, because it doesn't matter what you go through, you're going to come out on the other side of it stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody who's ever been part of a team knows that when you have chemistry, when you have true love for the people that are around you on your team, it makes it not only easier to go out and execute the thing that you're supposed to all do together, but it makes you all better, and you all grow from each other, and all those different sorts of things. So I love hearing that about this Broncos team, and I hope that they're able to retain. I think they have one of the highest retention rates, for lack of a better term, in terms of impending free agents this coming season. So there should be a lot of carryover, and that chemistry, you can't help but think that's going to help the defense. As Tim Wen said, Cody, he thinks they could shut down these final three teams. I think you've got to take that mentality and believe that they can. For 9 straight weeks, the Broncos were one of the most dominant defenses in the NFL, not just in terms of turnovers. They weren't just getting lucky. I mean, they were allowing 17.8 points per game. I mean, they were not giving up much at all. And actually 16.8, not 17.8. Got it. Can't go too high there. The Broncos defense was dominant. Pass rush, creating turnovers, preventing teams from converting third downs, preventing them from converting in the red zone, closing out games. You've got to believe against Bailey Zappi, Easton Stick, and Aiden O'Connell that you can get the job done these final 3 games.
That's the biggest thing here overall for this Broncos football team going forward, is that belief in that 3 games. Regardless, everybody knows this is what they have. This is all that's guaranteed. And one loss takes away any ambitions of the postseason. I think this team is going to be locked in this week against the New England Patriots. Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we're going to share some of the things we're confident in, or some things that we don't have a lot of confidence in with this team, with just 3 games remaining. Plus, Justin Simmons did something very special for a family here in Denver that I had a chance to watch him do. We'll dive deeper into that here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there, the Gametime app. And if you've ever had a frustrating ticket buying experience, sometimes it can dampen your ability to want to go out and see other events. Well, Gametime alleviates some of those concerns that you may have run into in the past with their app today. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events that are going on near you. It's easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event that's going on in your area. Gametime, they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats, find exclusive flash deals and sponsor deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Plus, with zone deals, you pick the section, and Gametime, they pick the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Gametime guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. If you find the tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. As we jump to the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, real quick, wanted to remind Broncos Country and say thank you so much for tuning in, making us part of your day every single day, whether you listen wherever you get your podcast, or if you also tune in on YouTube, you can interact with other members of Broncos Country in the YouTube comment section. There's always great discussion that is going on, I think, between everybody, sharing their thoughts on how the season has gone, sharing their thoughts already on things that they're most interested and looking at. And I think that's one thing that we have to highlight here going forward is Denver's got a lot of things that they can continue to do and progress on as the season moves about here. But Sayre, I mean, let's dive into some of our concerns, some of the things that we're confident in. I'll let you open things up here, my friend, to start off the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
Yeah, well, let's start with the bad news, right? Obviously, what's the concern? I think I share the same concerns as everybody else that the offense is not going to be able to do enough to get this team to the playoffs. Of course, that was the story last season that the Broncos couldn't win one-score games because of the offense, right? They had how many? 8 or 9 one-score games. They lost pretty much all of them. I mean, it was a tough season for the Denver Broncos last year. And so I think you have that concern kind of lingering, not just from this season and the things that we've seen, but even dating back to last year. I think that fear is pretty deeply rooted at this point, and largely because I think of Russell Wilson and the way that he plays his game. I know a lot of people like to argue about, well, he does this well, and he's never done this well, and this is what you should have expected to get. And I get all that, but at the same time, you want to see the offense have some form of consistent success. We're just not seeing it. And then the volatility of the defense, right? I mean, the first 6 games of the year, you pretty much worried that the defense wasn't going to be able to stop anybody, right? You were worried that you're going to have to go out there and hope to not allow 70 points the next week, right? So that defense, the volatility, the up and down. I mean, it's been kind of two really big chunks, but what worries you now is the fact of what you just saw against Detroit, and what they did there in that game looked so similar to the Chicago game, to the Miami game. It was bad. So you worry, like, is that group back now? Or, you don't want that group, that version of this defense to be resurrected from the dead. You want that 9-game defense that was one of the most dominant in the league. So the volatility of the defense, and I think the inability for the offense to do anything consistently, those are my biggest concerns at this point.
And I agree with you there. I think that some of the things you've summarized, kind of how I feel, like the offense being too much one-dimensional, I think has been a valid concern that we've had here. We talked about the team mentality, how it isn't shaken. That's something I'm confident in here. But at the same point, it's just about the realm of consistency. And look, I think to your point about like this past week we saw against Detroit, I mean, Sayre, we also saw some other games around the NFL in the last couple of weeks that just really indicate and pinpoint this league is truly week to week, because we've seen the Dallas Cowboys boat race the Philadelphia Eagles. We've seen the Seattle Seahawks led by Drew Lock beat the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football. We see the Dallas Cowboys get boat raced by the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen after they've had moments where, like, God, are they dead in the water? Like, this league is so weird. This has been a weird year in the NFL, and I feel like as it keeps going, we're going to keep running into things like that. Who can separate themselves with consistency? I think that's something we have to keep an eye on here. But, I think another thing, too, I want to talk about before we get out of today's episode of the show. The other day, Sayre, I had the chance to go tag along with our good friend Troy Rank. Brandon Cristal was there. We were the 3 media people that went to this event. Justin Simmons, on behalf of the Justin Simmons Foundation, he and his wife, Taryn, they partnered up with the Christmas Tree Project to deliver Christmas trees to families that, if they weren't for this, they wouldn't have a Christmas tree this holiday season. And seeing Justin being able to give back in the community, he does such a tremendous job with that. There was one interaction that we'll share here on the show. He hand delivered multiple trees to multiple families on the evening, obviously on Tuesday night. And one of the things that we saw here for the Broncos, it was actually Monday evening. We're recording on Tuesday, Monday evening. But one family is a single mom, 13-year-old son who plays football, is going into high school next year, loves football, loves the Broncos, had no idea that Justin Simmons was coming to deliver him a Christmas tree. Not only did Simmons knock on the door with the Christmas tree and bring it in and set it up, he also surprised the family with some other things as well. Here's a clip from what we got.
I call you Z. Is that cool? Yes. So we have the Christmas Tree Project gift card for you. And then there's $100 on that. We have a signed football from me to you.
Hold on to this for forever.
And then we have one more surprise. It's not physically here, but I think it's the coolest one. We have 4 tickets to the Patriots game this Sunday, Christmas Eve game, if you guys would like to go.
It's going to be a great Christmas for that family right there, Cody. I'll tell you what, you can't help but smile when you see stuff like that, man. Generosity and just authentic, genuine love coming from one to another. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So, hey, if that doesn't get the Broncos the dub this weekend, I don't know what will, right? That's some good vibes right there. You love to see it, and hopefully they're able to win for that young man and his mom. What an awesome moment for them to maybe go to their first game on Christmas Eve, and what a time, and what all that's at stake for the Denver Broncos right now. I mean, that should be an incredible environment. So what way to go for Justin Simmons. I mean, he's the GOAT. You see him hanging up behind me. I got a chance to meet Justin. He stayed, Cody, this guy, he's such a good guy. People got to know. I went to one game. It was just a random game, the Green Bay Packers game earlier this season. And me and our good friend Cameron Parker, we just stood outside the tunnel where players walk out. There's probably 150 people in a line in front of me. Justin Simmons, he stayed after and signed for every single one. If people wanted a picture, he's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's take a picture. If somebody didn't have a marker, he's grabbing it from the one before. I mean, he valued every single person in that line. So we know that it's not just something that he's doing a one-off type thing. This is the type of guy that he is, and it's just so awesome to see.
No, I mean, there's a reason he was a 3-time Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee for the Broncos back to back to back. I mean, just one of the most genuine-hearted human beings I've ever had the pleasure of interacting with, and being able to watch him do this. I love going to his events. I mean, this is a guy who genuinely cares about people, genuinely cares about helping out, making a difference. The Broncos have an all-pro on the field. They also have an all-pro off the field as well. And I think it's important we get to highlight some things like that. Well, Broncos Country, we appreciate you so much. You're a blessing to all of us as you continue to watch, listen, and interact with us here on Locked On Broncos, wherever you get your podcasts or available on YouTube. For all you everydayers out there, tomorrow's episode of the show, you can expect Sayre Bedinger sitting down one-on-one with Mike Debate, host of the Locked On Patriots podcast, to preview Sunday's Christmas Eve showdown, where it is expected to snow. They'll have you covered with all the action you need to know on tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.